Today, guys, we're going to be working on a problem if you have, and this is just a setup I've got to demonstrate this, but if you have a problem with the XM radio, the digital radio receiver, being VIN locked, and how you can get around that problem. So this setup here, and I'll link it up in the top of the video, is just a bench setup I've put together. You've got a radio, you've got a digital radio receiver, or XM radio receiver, you got a body control module, you got a powertrain control module. There's a connection here for the instrument cluster if you need it. There's a switch here that simulates the ignition switch, and then there's a DLC connector where you can plug in your Tech 2 or MDI. And then it's got power supplied over to a bench power supply. I'm going to power this guy up. He's supplying about 12 volts. I'm going to turn this ignition key on just to show you this is a working setup. Power on the radio. And I'm going to switch it to XM. And so you can see we got the speaker connected up here as well to the radio, and so you can actually hear the preview. This is just the preview of XM, just to show you this is working. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to turn the key off as if, you know, simulating everything's still connected to the battery, so to speak, quote unquote. But what if we had a situation where this was not working and we needed to replace it? They don't make these anymore, so your first inclination would probably be to go to a salvage yard and get another one that looks just like it, like this, and has a similar compatible part number. Well, let's see what happens if we swap that out. So if I unplug this guy, this is the connector to the computer bus here, and then this is the connection to the antenna. And I've got the shark fin actually sitting up on top of the counter here. And now I'm going to bring this guy in, connect the antenna, and I'm going to reconnect the system bus connector, if I can line it up properly. And now, if I turn this guy back on, this would be just like if I, went in the vehicle, and this applies to a dozen or so different vehicles. This particular setup is of a Cavalier. And I go to put this guy back on, I get XM lock. And that's the problem. Now, if I go change the bands, my radio's not locked. What's locked is XM. And the reason XM is locked, as soon as it figures it out, maybe I hit it too many times. Yeah, see, it won't even let me into the XM now. So first it was like locked, and now it's just skipping over XM as if it's not even valid or there. Now the reason for that is this stuff is tied to the VIN number, and the radio checks that the receiver's VIN matches the VIN that it has. That is also the one that's controlled by the body control module, who's the master keeper of the VIN number. Now if I swap these guys back out, I put the other one back in, what I would expect is for it to start working okay again, because it'll pass that VIN check this time. Actually, I probably should just turn this off, but I don't think it really matters. And now my XM's working again. So what I'm going to show you is, I'm going to put back the one that has it not working, and I'm going to show you what the problem really is, that you can't get around this. This particular device is very similar to some of these older body control modules. You cannot update the VIN number that's stored on the EEPROM on the board of this thing. So you come in with your Tech 2, and it won't do anything for you to alleviate this problem. So we get our XM lock again. So I'm going to get my Tech 2 and plug it in over here, and I'll show you how the Tech 2 won't be able to help you with this. And the same would be for an MDI running Tech 2 Win, which is the Windows emulator for the Tech 2. So hold on a second, let me get my Tech 2, and we'll plug it in, and we'll show that we can't reset the VIN on this with a Tech 2 scan tool. All right, so I've got my Tech 2 over here, and I'm going to plug my connection in on the DLC connection over here. Just pardon my arm being in the middle of this for a moment. I'm going to power my Tech 2 up. and we're going to get into the appropriate screen. So we're going to go into diagnostics. I'm going to build the vehicle. This particular vehicle, as I mentioned, was put together from a 2004 Cavalier. It's a J car, Cavalier. And what I'm interested in is on the body. Establishing communication. There's no OnStar unit. This is normal. I'm going to come down to the digital radio receiver. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go into special functions. And there's a DRR setup. If I had a brand new one of these digital radio receivers with a virgin EEPROM image in it, the Tech 2 would then configure it and load the VIN information correctly, and then you'd be able to go. That's what the dealer would have normally done. So we come over here and look at the radio. I'm just going to show you. We've left it in this XM lock position, so we're still on our bad state with the replacement out of the salvage yard. Now if I come over here and I run this DRR setup, it claims it's doing something. But if we come over here and we look at the radio, we're still locked, right? And we come back and look at the Tech 2, he says the procedure is complete. Now what's happened is he's gone out, he's talked to the BCM and the radio head unit, and they figured out that this receiver, this digital radio receiver, already has a VIN in it, so they're not going to change it. That's how GM wanted this to work. They did not want you using an used radio. Used digital radio receiver. Well, that doesn't work for us now because we can't get a new one of these anymore. So what can we do? And that's what this video is about. So let's get into it. So we can't use the Tech 2, so this is useless for us. So I'm going to power this guy down. I'm going to get him off the bench. And we're going to power this guy down, turn the radio off. We're going to turn the ignition off. And we're going to remove our connections. And what we're going to do is I'm going to grab a, I think it's a 3/16 was the right size. And I'm going to remove these two bolts and this bolt here. And we're going to take the cover off this guy. So let me clear the Tech 2 off the bench so that we can do that and put the new one back over, the original one back over here, and we'll take this apart and I'll show you how you... Okay, we're just removing this last bolt on this end, third bolt. Whoops. Okay, when you get all three of these bolts out, then this cover just slides off, revealing the board inside. And the chip we're after is right over here. Now I probably can get you a zoomed in view. Let me see if I can get a flashlight on here. And we can zoom in here and see the actual numbers on this guy. And what you'll find is that you can make out the chip manufacturer. In this case it's ST. But it's just got a house part number that Delphi ordered a number of these. And so you don't actually see the normal number on this EEPROM. But it turns out this is a 24C08 type of EEPROM. And so we're going to go ahead and read it as such. So I got one of these just inexpensive CH341A type of EEPROM programmers. They work pretty good for reading in-circuit type devices. And you could use this with a with a test clip type of adapter. I've got that too, but I just prefer using a pogo pin adapter because it's easier to get lined up in a situation like this. So I'm going to come over to this PC and I'm going to set the IC. It's an I2C class. It's an ST. And I'm just going to pick generic actually because I want to be able to get a 24C08 type size and read. And then I'm going to come over here. I'm just going to get my flashlight again so that I can line these pins up. Pin 1's always going to be where the little dot or notch is on the chip. And if I've got this guy set on all the pins properly, I'll guarantee that I did, but let's see if I did. Should be able to do a read of this. No, missing one of these pins. And that's the trouble with reading stuff in circuit and trying to film Normally I'd put this guy under a microscope or something so I could see very clearly what I was doing. There it goes. Finally read it. All right, so what are we looking at here? So there's a couple of things we're looking at. We're interested in two values. One of these values is going to match the XM satellite radio serial number. So I'm going to show you that from the cover. So if you take a look at the cover here, one of the sequence characters on here is D4D02M2. D4D02M2. If you take a look here, we see D4D02M2. That's one of the sequence of characters that we have in here. And the other sequence of characters we're going to have in here is a portion of the VIN number that's stored above that. So the VIN number is what you got to make sure matches the body control module. And then the XM number, the serial number, is what's tied to the account of the vehicle. So effectively, both of these have to change. Only the VIN has to be refreshed in order to unlock the radio and clear the message. But in order to get it to be a drop-in swap for your unit that has failed, you've also got to update this portion of the XM serial number. Now, what I would recommend people do is just swap the EEPROMs. Swap the original EEPROM off your bad one and put it on the replacement one, and you're good to go. But if for some reason you can't do that or you're not able to, then you have to go resort to a different technique here. So I'm just going to get set up here where I can not have to have one hand holding this pogo pin adapter and the other hand trying to read this item. Let me just get resituated here. We'll come back and we'll do that mod, and then we'll replug it back in. All right, guys, I ended up putting my test clip on here so I could free both my hands, even though I really prefer to use my pogo pin adapter because it's easier to see that I've made contact. You can end up with these test clips trying 3 or 4 or 5 times before you actually get a good read. But I've got this set up. I've got the programmer powered up, so let's pick up where we left off before. So I'm going to go ahead and reread the chip. And I'm going to actually correct the brain fart I had in the previous segment. I was viewing this portion of the screen and talking about the VIN number. The VIN number is actually way down here. And it's the last 6 digits of the VIN number. What we've got going on up here is the radio ID and then part of the serial number. Actually, you know, this whole sequence here plus here corresponds to the serial number on the sticker on the top cover. So, you know, I got the cover off this guy, and you can see that 03156M, and then there's a 1, and then the D4D020M2. Well, your radio ID is that last piece, D4D020M2. And there's our 3156M piece. There's no point in trying to update the radio ID. You know, what I've found is if you try to update it, there's code elsewhere on the circuit. When it comes up, the microcontroller will see this is wrong, and it'll overwrite it inside the XM radio. At the end of the video, I'll show you what the significance of these are. But basically what it means is the VIN is all it takes to unlock the error, which is the main point of the video. But you'll still have to call XM and give them the new radio ID, and I'll show you why at the end of the video. But let me go ahead and fix the VIN number so we can show how this unlocks. So I'm going to put the VIN of the Cavalier in that this is going into, 160309, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to write this chip. Okay, and then just to make sure it took, I'm going to go ahead and clear this and reread it and make sure that I've got this 160309. So now I'm going to unplug this test clip. I'm going to bring this guy back over, put the cover over here. I'm going to bring this guy back over and hook him back up. Just to turn our ignition key off, just to kind of make it more simulate the real world scenario. And then we never have powered it down. Now I'm going to turn it back on. And we've got our preview working. So we unlock the radio just by getting the VIN number plugged in here. This is both bands. This is FM still working just fine. AM's working just fine. And then XM1 preview and XM2 preview is working just fine. Now if I went backwards and went to channel 0, it would show the radio ID like I was mentioning. And now we should see, there it is, that D4D020M2 that is associated with this particular board. Now, the other board, I'll show you the other board, the original board is a little different. First of all, in addition to the 2 screws on this one, there's these designs sometimes have 2 screws on this side too. So there's 4 screws instead of 3 like that one. The other difference you'll notice is this has got a jumper pin kind of on this caddy corner of the EEPROM, and this one's got it on the back. Now, in this type, you can't read in circuit, so I've actually had to remove this EEPROM so that we can give it a read. But I'm going to go ahead and give a read of this one just so you can see that it's the same kind of approach. Right, so this is our 24C08 removed from the circuit. And what I'll do here is I'll try to get this test clip on it. No guarantees it'll go on perfectly the first time. What I would normally do on something like this is like a 0 insertion force socket, but I'm just going to try and use this for a moment, because if you get it lined up properly, it'll work just fine. All right, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to clear the buffer out, and hopefully I got it lined up right and we can get a read, or not. All right, guys, the test clip is really not the best approach for when you got it out of circuit, so I went ahead and put it in one of my 0 insertion force adapters so that we can just move on and take a look at what's on this guy, which is what we want to do. So we've got him sitting inside of this. Basically, with these types of adapters, you just set the chip inside this and it locks down on the pins. And I'm going to go ahead and clear the buffer here and go ahead and read this chip. And so this one, you can see, here's our original radio ID and our 4056M portion of that. And then down here we can see, again, the VIN of the original. So I've just shown you that you can do everything I showed in here. Is some models of these you can read in circuit, and some you're going to have to remove the device from the board and read it this way, and then make the writes to the VIN outside the circuit and then resolder it. When you end up in a situation like that, you know, what I recommend for getting it off the board is I use this product here called ShipQuick. I get this on eBay. I'll put a link in the description, but this is it's basically just a really low melting temperature alloy and combined with some tacky flux. And what you do is you get this on with a regular iron, and it contaminates the original solder and drastically reduces its melting point, so that you can get these things dislodged in just literally a few seconds or a minute at most. And you won't have to mess around with a hot air gun or anything like that. Then you can clean it up with a copper braid and solder it on the normal way after you've made the programming adjustment. But I just wanted to show you the 2 different types and point out that you probably should always remove it from the circuit to get a good read and a good write. But, you know, there are some that you can get away with it. If you're having trouble getting a read, you probably have to remove it from the circuit, particularly if you don't see these numbers in the clear like I have them. If you get a read of data, but you don't see these numbers, and particularly if you don't see the VIN, then it's a problem with some other device on the board conflicting with the bus when you're trying to make the read. Because once you power the device up, the whole board is going to power up. And so all the other devices on there are going to start coming alive as well. All right, so now let me break and show you in a different video with my laptop here at the end the significance of these radio IDs. All right, I'm on the XM radio trial, and there's 2 things you can enter on the XM radio trial screen. The radio ID, which is what we were talking about before, that's the serial number on the top of the receiver, right? It's these last few digits here that we talked about that we programmed into the EEPROM, or the VIN, which was one of the other things that's stored in the EEPROM. So if I type in the VIN that we needed for this vehicle, I'm just going to set my caps lock on here and put in our 4 Charlie 40 WX, and let's just put some dummy information in here so I can show you what this screen will tell you. Just from that radio ID, it can tell what the vehicle was. So it knew this came out of a 2004 Chevrolet Cavalier because they record all the way back to the first ones of these what the factory put into the vehicle. Something to keep in mind too, if you're trying to retrofit this onto a vehicle, you'll want to try to get the radio ID to match the vehicle you're trying to retrofit factory XM radio into. Now let's look at the donor vehicle. That was D4D020M2, I believe. D4 D020M2, yes. And this was our original donor vehicle. And we can see what this came out of. If it refreshes, there it is. It came out of a 2003. It actually came out of a 2003 Yukon XL 1500. And so it knows that too. Just the VIN would unlock it, but the radio ID also will make sure there's no interruption in your service. If you just updated the VIN, you'd be able to call up XM and tell them you've got a different radio ID. But that's just something else that you can see to check. If you don't know what your radio ID is, you just turn to channel 0, and then it will give you that. And then, of course, you can go back to channel 1 and get back to the preview. Or channel 2. So I hope that helped you out. If you've got some questions about this particular repair, go ahead and leave the comments, and I'll try to help you. In the video description, I'll put the latest information. There's about a dozen or so vehicles that this particular repair would apply to, and I'll list all of those years that this these series of digital radio receivers would fit into, and that are compatible to interchange and make these kind of adjustments. I will also put some links to some of the years that they apply to, as well as the makes and models. And always check the description for the latest information. Keeps the video current from going obsolete as things change and new information comes together. If you like this, please click the like button and subscribe and get more content of this type. Otherwise, thanks for watching.